Fellas, welcome back to the Front Row Dads podcast. If you're new here, I'm your host, John Broman. This is the show for family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. And I have got an epic guest for you today with Matthew Christiansen, and I'll read his bio in a quick second. But fellas, before we do that, I want to make sure that you know about our online summit, which means you could join from anywhere in the world. It's coming up in November. The topic is emotional intelligence. If you've ever lost it at home, if you ever raise your voice, if you're out of sync, right? If you are out of harmony, if you are intense with your children beyond a level of what you feel is healthy, your nervous system might be out of whack and you might need some work in the emotional intelligence space. We're going to dig in deep there. I hope you will join us. And also excited to tell you our first ever Front Row Dad live event is in Austin, Texas, December 2nd through the 4th. And if you are thinking about being a member, you're invited. And if you are a member, you're definitely invited. That event will sell out. If you would like to be with us in person, nothing beats the in-person events, then go to frontrowdads.com/live and learn more about it. Guys, let's get into our interview today with my new friend. And I'm excited to say that, Matthew Christiansen. He is a father of three. He's also the CEO of the game development studio, Mount Verita, which we'll talk about that in a quick second. The former CEO of Brightbridge Web, a musician with music on Spotify, that's saying something, a guitar teacher, a tennis instructor, and an avid rock climber. Matthew, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, John.
What is Mount Verita?
Yeah, so I lived in Italy for 2 years. Veritas stands for truth. It'd be said more like verita, but
that's what I meant to say. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, right. But so pretty much what it stands for is mountain of truth, and that's what I'm going for with my game. The games I'm building is kind of like they're going to be games that are real, and I want to promote like goodness in the space, but also just kind of listen to feedback from gamers to just make good games.
So let's launch off with games for a minute then. Where did your relationship to games begin in your life?
Yeah, so it started when I was 10 with a science fair. And so my dad was super supportive. I guess he's also presented on this, which funny story about that. I met John and listened to all his podcast stuff and was telling my dad about it. And my dad's like, oh yeah, I was on his podcast. and then we all made the connection. But when I was 10, I got into the BYU or the university science fair for building video games. And I made little games where you'd move around and try not to hit walls and stuff. And I was testing whether colors affect how your hand-eye coordination is in games and stuff. And I won local and district. And then I won the university science fair at that age. And from that point on, I was like, wow, this is something I can do. So I've always kind of wanted to do that. But, I transitioned into web development with Brightbridge Web. And then after I sold that, I kind of went back to my 10-year-old childhood dream, and I'm making games again.
So great. And so let's connect some dots here, big picture, right? So your dad gets introduced to me by multiple people that have gone through his program, which is a family legacy program. This is how do you operate in a family way that takes maybe some of these business principles, which he has been wildly successful in business, and how do we bring them into the family, the core values, the mission, the ethos, all these things that you bring in. And so multiple people were telling me that I needed to talk to your dad, and to which we did. And guys loved, hearing about his approach to fatherhood. And then we get connected. And now I have this other viewpoint of what was it like growing up with Rich as your dad. And look at you now, man. You just built and sold a company, and we hit it off just catching up for a few minutes on the phone. And I'm like, I love talking to quality people who are winning at life, meaning in so many ways you are creating success, but you have humility. You have, there's a confidence and humility about you that I really appreciate. And you're the type of person that I'm like, oh, it'd be great if Matthew got time with my boys. That's kind of how I gauge success of men, is like, would I want that person influencing my children? Would I be cool with that guy hanging out and teaching some life principles to my kids? And you're definitely one of those people for me. So the fact that I'm connected to your family in this very unique way, I'm thrilled about. So let's talk a little bit about your, there's so many places I want to go here, but let's go back to childhood for a minute again. What was it like growing up in your house? What was it like growing up for you?
Well, so first of all, thanks for those kind words, John. I can't tell you how much that means, especially, coming from you with your podcast has helped me through some hard times, and maybe I'll go into that later in the conversation. But yeah, growing up in my family was amazing. Like you talk, like when I hear being on the front row, I think my first thought is like being at the soccer games, right? In the front row of the soccer games. Well, since I sold my business, I'm also reffing soccer now. And I'll tell you what, there's like different types of people in the front row. Like there are some people in the front row who are like, go, and, cheering on their kids. There are others who are like yelling at them and whatnot,
All different parenting styles.
All different parenting styles. And I'd say one thing my parents did very well, both my mom and dad, is it was always building us up, but teaching us to try hard and work hard instead of just telling us that just telling us that we're doing good. It would more be like you're doing a good trying hard,
Mm-hmm.
and like focusing on the effort with us, I think is better, because then instead of having a family where we're constantly like trying to prove that we are as good as they're telling us we are, instead they're encouraging our efforts. And that was one thing my parents did really well. And also unconditional love, I'd say, is the biggest. It is more important than business and success, and by the world standpoint, is knowing that family sticks together and they're there for each other. I think my dad wrote a book called Till Your Toes Turn Purple, and that's one not so many people know about, but he wrote it on basically his most important concept of parenting, which was when we made a mistake, we spill stuff all over the floor, instead of, saying, oh my gosh, Matthew, clean that up, and like freaking out. Sometimes I do that with my parents. I try to pull back and, be like my mom, be like my dad. Because instead of doing that, what they would do is they'd be like, you know what, you made a mistake, but I still love you, and that's okay. And, but we got to clean up our mistake. And how true is that, especially when we get older in life? As adults, we make real mistakes, and some kids make mistakes that drive them away from their parents. Some parents make mistakes that make their kids want to pull away, But the biggest thing I'd say about my parenting, my parents' philosophy that works, that I want to carry on, is just knowing that we still love each other after the mistake. And, in the term of my dad's book, till your toes turn purple. I'll love you if your toes turn purple. I'll love you if you break, the toilet, or you make a real mess in life. I'll still love you, and we'll get through it together.
I know your dad put together this rite of passage program. There's like things that you do at 8 or 10 or 12, 14, 16. What's one event, milestone, rite of passage, whatever term you would want to use right around this space, that was really significant for you as a child, pre 18 years of age?
Yeah. So when I was 14, we went to the Himalayas. So that's the funny thing about my dad, is I didn't know he was so successful financially. He kind of kept that under the radar. We lived kind of in a normal middle-class house in a normal neighborhood. And the first time I realized he was so successful is I was at a college lecture, and he was the keynote speaker talking about all the businesses he built. And I was like, oh, whoa, holy cow, Dad, you're amazing. He's like, yep.
That's so great, man.
But
So great.
that adventure was kind of a hint to me, as I was like, wait, how can we afford to like go to the Himalayas? But cool, like,
yeah.
But we showed up there, and it was a turning point in my life. I was 14, that age where, it's surprising at how young of an age people start making big decisions, but I had friends who were getting into drugs and, making some decisions that could have caused future issues for their lives and stuff. And going on that trip with my dad and seeing people, starving and dying, and, giving them blankets and saying that like make a world of difference for their life, and it made me realize, man, sometimes we got it all wrong. We get so caught up in, our like emotional over little things, like what, Joey said about me at the football game, et cetera, but there's people out there going through real stuff. And I thought, man, I want to do something to help that in the future. So I kind of told myself, I'm going to be successful in business and life so that I can do good at that moment. And it was a turning point in my life. So definitely that family trip was, and that structure my dad has been an amazing thing for me.
Now, there's another piece of this where, if I'm not mistaken, you built a business at 16. Is that correct? Was that part of the program?
Yeah. So when I was pretty young, I guess it was when web development was first a thing, all left justified, whatever. My dad helped me put together a kind of business doing Google ads.
Yeah.
And we actually made a ton of money. We called it Christiansen Custom Dreams. And me and all my brothers got into it. And we made a pretty successful business at a young age. And that's what funded me going to Italy for 2 years, actually, where I was kind of a service missionary for my church. I was serving people, helping them, teaching them and such.
That's cool. And then past that, you fast forwarding a little bit into your adult life, you then built a business, but that was really without any investment from your dad, correct? This was on your own. You went out and started, and then ultimately sold a business.
Yeah. I guess instead of teaching me to throw the ball or play soccer, my dad was teaching me business since I was a kid,
Yeah.
So it was natural. When I was in college, I decided I was going to try doing web development and make money doing it on the side instead of, working a college job. So yeah, I ended up getting my first client through like an online freelancing site, and he ran a super yacht company. So I was helping him build a site for a super yacht company. And then I realized I could get more clients pretty easily. So I got more, and then I eventually started hiring like neighborhood kids and teaching them how to code. Before I knew it, I had like 5 young employees. One of them is that one I sent you the bio of, who, became most likely to succeed under 40. And I taught him how to code. So that was kind of cool.
Wow.
One kid was in extreme poverty that I brought into my business, like 6 siblings. A parent had passed away. He was just raised with a dad, and they had one shower in their whole house. And it's been so cool, seeing him work for Brightbridge, gain these skills, and actually helping pay his family's bills even. And now he's in a good spot in life financially. So yeah, it was amazing starting Brightbridge. Eventually grew it to like 20 employees. And like, if I'm being honest, there was even like that it wasn't really anyone supporting me financially or even super encouraging it at first. But as it grew, people were like, okay, I see how that works.
Yeah.
Good job.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It seems that a lot of things have gone really well for you. You've had this great family and had these experiences and built these businesses. I think it's sometimes easy to think that people haven't experienced real dark days. They haven't lived through the storms. And they're not always the easiest things to talk about, but talk to us about some of the more difficult moments of either childhood or your adult life, or where has life tested you?
Yeah. So I'll say the most difficult thing was right after I sold my business. I have 4 kids currently. And right after I sold my business, one of my kids passed away. And this isn't something I would normally be super into opening up about. It's a super personal thing, as I know anyone who's lost someone would feel. But I feel like it's something that I can share about, because I think that it could be a gift from my kiddo to someone, going through immense grief, depression, or anxiety, to share about this a little bit. So yeah, after I sold my business, I was already starting to have like a little lack of identity, because I'm kind of set financially for life. I'm like 29. And then my kid passed away too. And it was dark. I didn't know my purpose or where I belonged in some sense. Faith was one thing that was keeping me going, and hope, but I was in a very dark spot. And when you're in that spot, people often say things to try to comfort you that they don't realize aren't comforting. And I would have been one of those people had I not gone through it. So some of the things people would say would be like, "Hey, how are you doing?" That's a normal question. But when your kid just passed away, that question just, can send you into a wave of tears, like not okay. And it's crazy that, I'm answering this, and, later you learn to be like, okay again with hearing questions and conversing. But, at first it's a hard thing. Some context on his passing: he was born with some genetic defects and such. And it resulted in basically his kidney growing too big and his lungs couldn't handle air. So he was with us for about a month, and then he passed away while I was holding his little hand, and he passed away. So immense grief. It's been 7 months now. I still feel it a lot. And one of the ways I have gotten through it has been listening to podcasts. So that was why I reached out to, John in the first place, was actually just to thank John and tell him, your podcast about being on the front row helped me. Because after my kiddo passed, I had a friend come up to me and tell me, when my kid passed, my parents were never the same. Or when my brother passed, my parents were never the same. And I thought, I can't do that. I got to still show up for my other 3 kids. They're the world to me, But, I'm hurting so much inside. Sometimes it's hard to function. So I've turned, heavily to faith and religion, but also, to podcasts and just hearing other people's stories and how they've gotten through it, And a couple things in particular that have really helped me is, one, in your podcast and amongst various podcasts I've heard, like happiness is a diet instead of like just a feeling. And just like it's I guess a leader, like a front thought right now on happiness, that instead of just trying to feel the emotion of happiness to be happy, you have to be able to feel fulfilled. You have to be able to, have moments of joy. You have to, be serving, and you have to be physically in a good shape, And so I started thinking, I need to get a lot of balance in my life. And I almost started overcompensating to stay, at average. Whereas like normally for a normal person, I think, having all the things, just going perfect in their life, maybe they'd feel above average. But, this year's been hard. One of those years where I'm just trying to do everything to stay at average. And also I'm trying to do good for my son instead of, just feeling so sad I don't function. So another thing, I've learned through it is, I guess with that note, is routines. Is when you've gone through grief, you're an immense loss. It's just like, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything until I started getting in a routine. And I told myself, no matter what, no matter how I feel, I'm gonna make sure I get up and, get breakfast. And I'm gonna start with just doing that, and I'm gonna make sure my kids eat a good breakfast, like that's the one thing I'm gonna do tomorrow. And I eventually got in the habit of doing that. And it helped me get back to being at least a parent who is, there for breakfast, right? And then eventually it's,
Yes.
add to it. I'm going to start going to the gym once a day. I'm not even going to guarantee that I'll work out. I'm going to just show up. And if I work out, great. And then, eventually you start exercising again and getting to a point where you have energy. Because that was a big thing too, is after the loss, I didn't have energy. I couldn't function. And so, yeah, to function, I almost had to start exercising and get my health up to a point that I could function through it. And, a number of things like that. My dad would tell you meditation is huge. And actually, I thought meditation was the silliest thing. My dad used to always be like, son, come sit with me. We're going to breathe. And I'm like, Dad, you're so weird. Like, but
Totally.
he was totally right. And it's one of those things that maybe not everyone needs, but when you're going through immense anxiety, stress, depression, grief, sitting and breathing, or maybe going through a guided meditation can be very, very helpful. But I could go on about this for a long time, but I think the biggest takeaway thing that I would want to share with someone going through grief is get in a routine for those you love. Try to do good for the one that you lost, and just keep hanging in there. It's okay to not be okay sometimes. And it's good that you keep grieving, because eventually you reach this point, which I've reached now, where some people forget about it, and they start unpacking their problems on you, and you're like, my kid died. Like, I'm sorry, you had a stressful day at work, but eventually you have to learn to, like, it's like, if something triggers you and you're in a bad spot, it's okay to feel not okay for a little bit. Let the feelings pass through you, and that will help you get better than trying to numb the pain with, whatever your numbing mechanism is. There's just so many people today trying to numb that pain, and then they're mentally numb and not there for their kids and their family. So it's almost better to pass through it and honor the one you've lost than just trying to numb it out all the time.
Think about what a true brotherhood is here, in Front Row Dads with, all these guys. How we show up for each other is so important. What advice would you have for another man who has a buddy, a brother who's going through something tragic in his life? What would you say from your perspective was helpful to hear? How did people show up for you? Particularly men supporting other men. What was there ingredients there? Were there patterns there? Did you recognize things that did work? Words that landed well with you?
Yeah. So I would say, at least from my experience, and maybe everyone's different, but from my experience, the best thing you can say is to express grief for the loss yourself, like, instead of saying like, oh, I know you missed him, or, oh, you'll get through this, or like, oh, you'll see him again, or, something like that. What I always wanted to hear was, I am so darn freaking sad he's gone, and I miss that kid so freaking much, and just have a hug. That's what I want to hear. I'm so freaking upset that he's gone. And my father-in-law did, that was, his response, as well as both my parents. And that was extremely comforting to me. And, even seeing them go through the grief too was good for me. And I know that it stinks that they had to shoulder that burden too, but it just meant so much to me that they cared about him, and they still do. So I'd say that's the best thing you can do, is be there for the loss, and keep being there, because because the truth is, even a year later, I was talking to a dear friend of mine. I have one friend who's also lost a kid, and he lost a kid a few years ago, and he was telling me, Matt, the second year is the hardest. I'm like, I'm only 7 months into this,
Yeah.
and already 7 months in, everyone forgets, everyone moves on, but that was an eye opener to me that, like, now when other people go through a loss, I'm, months, years later, I'm still going to be there with them, and realize, good chance if they're having a tough moment, there's a good chance it's tied to their loss, because it kind of is always something that's always with you.
How do you talk to your kids now about this, and how old are they?
So I have a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and the one I lost to is just about a little older than 6 months now. So that is a really, really difficult question. It's, with my kids, we just try to be open and honest, because the truth is, we want them to know about their brother, and it, for us at least, it's important that he's remembered by all of us in the family. So we were open with them and let them know that he passed away. And at first, our kids are started to realize death is real, and they started to have fears and stuff like that. And it was some stuff to work through, some challenges to work through. But I think it's good they're learning these things at a young age, and learning how to help others through it, learning that there will be challenges in life. And that, that we're open with them. The other day, my daughter actually drew a family picture for us, and I was excited to see it. And she showed it to me, and she's like, here's mom and dad and me and my sister and my brother and my baby brother. And she drew a picture of the kid who, my son, who passed away, with my mom holding him. And we just all kind of cried together and hugged each other. And it was like needed, almost like our little 5-year-old was comforting us by remembering our son. So I guess that's a little about our interactions.
Thank you for sharing that, Matthew. My feeling is that's, and I'm projecting this, of course, but it's like, that's not easy to talk about. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I do think that's very helpful for all of us to feel that with you. So thank you. When you think about who you want to be every day, what type of father you want to be, what does that look like for you? How do you show up each day now? And I realize it's been an evolution. As you said, first it was making breakfast, right? Yeah. And then and I love that. Those just, hey, I'm going to manage the next 10 minutes, right? I'm going to put, it's one foot in front of the other. As you stand or sit today for this conversation, who's the man in front of me, that wants to show up as a dad? What drives you? What wakes you up? What beliefs do you bring to each moment?
Yeah. So we're always talking a lot of good about my dad, and there's so much good about him. We talk for hours, but a lot of the good comes from my mom. She is an unsung hero angel, and her mom as well. And, her dad, when I was young, I remember her telling me this story about my grandpa, I think around the time he passed away. So my mom's father. And pretty much he was, given kind of like a blessing by someone in, his Christian faith, that he would be a rich man. But he was a farmer. He was poor his whole life. Never had a lot of money. But he had 9 kids. And he was always sad his whole life. He was like, no, wasn't real. I was never rich. Didn't come true, whatever. And he was sad about that. At his funeral, though, there was like 100 people, like all his posterity. There was a whole orchestra of like grandchildren at his funeral. and someone made the comment, he was a rich man, you know? And I'm not saying it's like the number of kids, you know, like I think honestly, after everything we've been through, I think, you know, we're gonna probably have 4 kids in my family. And, you know, one kid's awesome too, but I think it's the quality of, you know, it's the fact that you have kids who are happy, who are moving on. Because the truth of the day, if you make the most amazing piece of art, 1,000 years from now, it will fade away, right? You know, this podcast, I hope it lasts forever, but someday, you know, it might disappear, you know, in 1,000 years, everyone's in VR now doing whatever, you know. But what carries on after we pass is our family. And I guess it's a lot of what my dad's belief too. But I learned a lot of that from my grandpa's experience there, what my mom shared. And I think that that's where I love so much being a family man first, then having a business, because that's what happens when we die. You know, there's also been like funerals that, you know, me and my family members have attended for people who've been super successful in the world, and then, you know, maybe there's no one there when they pass away, you know. So I think that's kind of one of my biggest philosophies, is most importantly is family sticking together, having that, you know, unconditional love being a key element to that. And along with that, one other thought on that note is something else my mom taught me that seems obvious, but I feel like a lot of people don't know, which is always talking good about others behind their back. From a young age, anytime one of us complained about a friend or something, my mom would be like, no, we never talk bad about people behind their back, because that's like way worse than talking bad in front of them. So that was a lesson I learned young. And so it surprises me a lot at the time in business to see so much backbiting, so much backstabbing. And also, you know, in observations I've made, a lot of families that have issues or have fallen apart, it's because of that back conversations. Whereas if they just came up to each other and, you know, were honest with each other, even if they've all made big mistakes, if they had their conversations face to face, they'd be able to keep those riches of pretty much just being united as a family.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And it's present. What's relevant right now, as you say all that, is I'm reading Don Miguel Ruiz, or listening to rather, with Tiger on the way to school. Tiger is 13. And one of them is be impeccable with your word, which is about not gossiping. Part of it is not gossiping. And so he and I have talked about that a lot recently. And it's interesting. Gossip's interesting too, because sometimes you can justify that you're like, oh, I'm selling this because I'm going to help this person. And there's a little bit of a gray area, because sometimes it is helpful to talk about a person or a story and to learn from that and so on. And a lot of it goes back to the intention, like the true intention of that conversation and what's happening there. And would you say that, and have you said that directly to that person in their presence? That's important.
Oh yeah, I'd 100% agree with that.
Yeah. How will you know if your children are successful? You know, what would you like to see in your children? You know, and is that even possible to say? You know, I don't know. But like, when you think ahead, you're like, oh, if I do my job as a dad, this is what I might see in the future.
Yeah, that's another one of those things that's changed about me. Like if you asked me that a year ago, I'd be like, man, I want my kids to like kill it at business and just like be so smart and get good grades and just like, you know, do well by the world standards. But, you know, like before my kid passed away, we first found out that he was going to, if he lived through it, he was going to have limited mental capacity. And we started to change how we thought. And we were like, you know what success in life is? It's just that he can be happy, you know? And we were just wanting him to live so badly so we could at least help him have joy and find happiness in life. So it's one of those things that like totally has changed now. I'm a different person than a year ago after this. And really what I want most, what being on the front row for my kids means to me is helping them learn and grow and know that they're loved to the best capacity that they can be.
Yeah. What's bringing you a lot of happiness these days? What specific moments throughout your day make you the happiest?
Oh, like I would say definitely seeing your kids be happy is a big happy moment, and going back to that routine thing, is like, I've tried to, inspired by a lot of things since everything I've gone through, inspired by your podcast. And part two is I've really tried to be on the front row for friends as well lately. And I've started what we call the family pickleball club. And every morning, me and all my brothers and my dad, we get together at like 7 a.m. and play pickleball before school. And that brings me a lot of joy. And we have a lot of conversations there. And one of the conversations we started having is John Broman's conversation prompt. How can I be on the front row for you?
Yeah.
Like, what is the most important thing you're trying to do for your life? And totally, I felt like I've been doing that. I've also joined a mastermind with some of my dear friends. They've been friends since I was 3 years old, and we all are just doing whatever we're doing. Some of them are just working their day jobs. Some of them are, running their business, whatever, but we all get together and we are asking each other questions like that and trying to hold each other accountable and also help each other. And I have noticed and found a lot of joy in being able to help people with their goals with my web development skills. But I've also noticed a lot of them have been helping me back, and I'm not doing it for anything in return, but I found a lot of joy with like sharing this game my latest game I've been developing, and seeing them, love it and play it and give me good feedback and such.
Can you talk to us about the game?
Yeah. So the game I'm working on right now, it's called Planet Surfer. It's like similar to, have you seen the new Top Gun movie?
Yes.
So I'd say it's like that in video game format. So basically you're piloting like this ship and you're going through some crazy obstacles, trying not to blow up to save the planet or whatever. But yeah, I guess similar to Temple Run or like Subway Surfer. It's called Planet Surfer. It will be on the Steam platform. But if you go to MatthewChristiansen.com, you could probably see a link to join like the closed beta now. It will be on Steam probably in the next like week live. It's currently closed beta, but in like a week, people should be able to like at least like sign up to join the play test. And I think in 3 months it'll be live on the platform for people to just play it. So I'll definitely be sending you a copy, John.
Love it. I love it. When you obviously, you sold a company, you could retire, but you're pursuing passions, you're building, which is great. I love that. What does a week look like for you? From a broader stroke perspective, how are you managing your time? How are you creating boundaries with work? How do you talk to us about the calendar? I think this is a real struggle for a lot of our men, is like, how do I get it all done? How do I show up for my family, pursue my passions, take care of my health, right? Do all these things that need to be done over the course of a week. Do you have principles that guide your calendar and your time that you could share?
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's very healthy to get an Excel spreadsheet and just write down your perfect day. Like if tomorrow I lived my perfect day, and maybe even think like this, if tomorrow was my last day, what would I do? And thinking that way might add some more family things, some more of the things that are like, a little more important to it. And I think it's important to also have in there some things that have enjoyment, because your last day on earth, you don't want to just like be totally sad all the time. Maybe do your family pickleball club, or maybe find a way to accomplish some of your goals while doing good. maybe you take whatever your hobby is, and instead of turning it into something that kills time or wastes time, you're like, no, tomorrow I'm going to do my hobby, and it's going to be in efforts to be better at it and to love it. Like for me, disc golf, instead of going disc golfing to kill time, I love disc golf. I'm going to go disc golfing to try to be a better disc golfer when I disc golf tomorrow. So it might look like there's disc golf on that schedule, might look like get up at 7, play pickleball. So we've got some fun things. And then I say, instead of saying like, I'm going to work this many hours, I say, I'm going to like knock out 10 bugs on my game, or like 10 tasks on what I'm trying to build with my current business, and being very objective driven in your day. And I think if you go hour by hour, plan it out, and then the next day you go into it knowing that this is your perfect day. So even if you don't do perfect, but you're trying, at least you got more done than if you didn't try. And that's how I started, getting back into, kind of having a routine after just like getting hit by the train of selling my business, losing my purpose in my mind, and like having a kid die. Like I started just writing down what's the perfect things to do. What in my plate of happiness, what do I want to have for success? What do I want to have for joy? What do I want to have for, most importantly, success with my family? And so on that, you might include, even if it's like 30 minutes of, wrestling around with your kids or something, including that, I think is huge. I think if every family if every parent had at least 30 minutes in their schedule with their kids that was not dedicated to like, I'm just going to stand there and be with my kids, but like, I'm going to try really hard during those 30 minutes to help them learn something and to feel loved. If every parent had that, I think all kids would feel a little more like their parents care about them.
That's a great thought, man. 30 minutes to just like, hey, how can I help them learn something or just show that they're loved? That's beautiful. It's a great filter. I really appreciate that. Matthew, I really want to thank you, by the way, for this. We're going to call it this initial conversation, because the good news is that you and your dad are going to be with us in person in Austin for our event, where I am really excited to have conversation from both of your perspectives on this rite of passage program, and all these milestones and these pieces of your life that we got into at the beginning of the show, from, being in the Himalayas and then building a business together as a family, and all these elements and these pieces of your life that we get a chance to dig into and learn from, and have some models and examples of what could be done and one way of approaching family life. And now that you're a father and you get a chance to ask, what do you want it to look like? What's important to you? What's your family brand, right? What are your family values? So cool to see this multi-generational, impact and love and connection. Very cool to have a front row seat to your life right now. So thank you for opening up. Thank you for the realness that you brought to this conversation. Thanks for, what we're going to build together here within Front Row Dads, and the real brotherhood that we're going to be able to create in December together. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Awesome.
Is there
Thank
anything
you, John? Appreciate
Yeah.
you. You're awesome, man. You've been a light to me.
Thank you, man. I received that. Thank you so much. And I'm doing my best right now and growing every day. Matthew, is there anything you want to say to the guys that are out there listening? Anything at all? How they can connect with you? Final words? Anything we didn't complete or button up or we want to come back to?
I just say, yeah, if anyone wants to connect with me, you're definitely welcome to go to my website, MatthewChristiansen.com. It should link you to my game dev studio, where you could join my server by joining the Discord server on the links there. And yeah, I'd be open to connecting with anyone, helping anyone going through anything, especially, something like this, what I've been through. And also just, yeah, if anyone has interest in playing my game, you can get it for free right now. So feel free to join that closed beta.
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate you very much. Looking forward to December. Guys, go get your ticket to Front Row Dad Live at frontrowdads.com/live. It's right there on the website. All the details. If you need anything, just send us an email to info@frontrowdads.com and we'll get you all squared away. But Matthew, I'll see you in December. And thanks again for today.
Thanks, you, brother.